All right, welcome back, everybody. I'm Jesse Weber. We have this special coverage of a live Diddy hearing in downtown New York in the federal courthouse. It wrapped up a little bit earlier on, but that's okay. In case you missed it, we have with us Law&Crime's very own Elizabeth Millner, who was in that courtroom. And Elizabeth, it's so good to see you. I have so many questions for you. I want to take one at a time. First of all, how did Sean Diddy Combs appear? And was there anybody there in attendance for him?
Well, honestly, Jesse, I feel like Diddy's appearance was probably the biggest story that happened inside that hearing. There was kind of an astonishing whoa when he walked inside that courtroom because he appeared noticeably grayer. I would even kind of equate it a little bit to Santa Claus, but he just appeared grayer. His hair was a lot whiter. Now, remember, the last time I was inside one of Diddy's hearings, that was back in December. We're in March, so that's just a 3-month time span of just that intense grayness. So either him being at MDC Brooklyn for this amount of time is weighing on him, this federal case is weighing on him, maybe even his fall from grace entirely is probably weighing on him, but he just looked visibly different. I will say, though, last time he appeared thinner. This time it seems like he did kind of pack on a little bit of pounds, and I don't say that in a disrespectful way at all, but he did seem to kind of put his weight back up from the last time that I saw him. But it really was just kind of a stark difference. Now, he was graying a little bit in the last hearing, that is no doubt, so it wasn't too big of a jump. But again, a lot of us who were sitting in the gallery, a lot of the reporters were just kind of like, whoa, because of just how astonishingly grayer he appeared during that time. Now, as far as who was inside that courtroom, it was, as far as his family goes, a lot smaller of a group than we've seen before. We've seen times where all of his kids, maybe with the exception of his now 2-year-old daughter, being inside that courtroom, putting up a united front. But again, this was kind of a smaller group this time. It was only Diddy's daughter, Jessie Combs, and it was Diddy's son, Christian Combs, also known as King, as well as Diddy's mother, Janice Combs. So, of course, when Diddy comes into the courtroom, that's the first thing he's looking out for, is that he's going to be looking out for his family. He's going to be waving to them, you know, kind of mouthing "I love you" and all of that sort. And that's what happened as well as when he was leaving, too. I even saw him kind of mouth "Hi, Mommy" to his own mother. But, you know, his son, Quincy, wasn't there. His son, Justin, wasn't there. The twins weren't there. And, of course, his youngest daughter, just 2 years old probably at this time, Love, wasn't there. So really it was just a smaller group of supporters this time, and it might have just been scheduling, it might have just been the fact that this wasn't going to be a big hearing necessarily, but also we didn't know what we could really expect from it. But you know, it was just kind of different as far as what we've seen before, where they take up an entire row in the gallery, to just being in a small little corner there. But it appeared that Diddy was just happy to see him, happy to see his family, happy to have support in there for in the courtroom. And as far as even just at the defense table too, another noticeable difference that I thought to myself was just the fact that Anthony Rico was no longer there. Again, he filed a letter kind of saying that he can't be on the case anymore, and that was just a few weeks ago. And so that to me was kind of a stark difference from last hearing to this hearing.
Defense attorneys basically said there's no way I can continue. Not entirely sure what that even meant. By the way, it was interesting when you mentioned his appearance. It could be the stress. It could also be, and I have no way to confirm this, he doesn't have access to the same kind of beauty regimen as he might have had on the outside, and whether that meant dyeing his hair or whatnot. I mean, he's not the youngest guy, so it's something I thought about. Okay, so I want to now get into the substance of this hearing. A big part of this hearing was regarding the CNN tape. The tape of Sean Combs purportedly beating Cassandra Ventura, who by all accounts appears to be one of the key victims in this case, victim number 1 to be more specific in this case, that there was this allegation regarding what CNN did to this tape, and there was back and forth. Remember, this was published in March of last year. No, it was May of last year. So talk to us about what the back and forth was regarding this tape, because I have to imagine it could be a key piece of evidence in this prosecution.
And like you had mentioned, Jesse, a key piece of evidence, and that's what the government was trying to argue there, that it is critical to their case to have this video admitted. Now, I will preface it and say this. The judge made no type of ruling on it, but he did kind of make a big suggestion. So before I get into that, let me just say the defense argues, and they kind of outlined this in their letter, that they believe that the video is deceptive. They have a forensic examiner who says that they put the video into editing software, and that CNN put the video into editing software, but that the time times were changed, the sequence was changed, they covered up the timestamp. But let's face it, Jesse, we all saw that video. Whether or not CNN did allegedly speed up this video, or whether or not that they kind of framed different pieces and different sequences, it never takes your eyes kind of away from the fact, or that we saw with our own eyes, Diddy gruesomely beating up Cassie Ventura. It was terrible. It was really shocking. And, you know, we say shocking a lot, but I mean, I just remember watching that video because it did play on a loop on CNN that day. And it was just terrible to watch. And we all saw Diddy kind of make that apology video afterwards. So for them to kind of have this argument about the CNN video in the first place, about it being altered, all of that sort, well, their client already admitted to doing what he did. But again, we still have to kind of put out allegedly here and there. But as far as the government wants, they want that video admitted into evidence. They want to use that video because they do believe it is critical to their case. Whereas the defense, it seems like they're kind of gearing up to put a motion in place to kind of suppress that video from a jury ever seeing it. But you kind of can't help but think, did a juror already see it? Did a potential juror already see it? So this was the judge's recommendation. They wanted to see if there was a way, maybe the defense and the government, who they kind of seem that they are working things out kind of outside of the hearings, outside of the court, but they were seeing if there was a way for the defense to kind of place together the video and the way that they believe originally happened and see what the government says about that. Now, if they can't come to a decision from both sides, then that's when the judge will step in, then that's when the motions will be filed, and then that'll be taken up at another hearing. But it seems from the government side of everything that this piece of evidence is going to be critical to their case. I mean, even taking a step back to just last year, a lot of people did not believe Diddy's alleged victims, whether it be in the lawsuits or anything like that, until that video came out, until they saw with their own eyes just Diddy putting his hands on Cassie Ventura. And again, this was back in 2016. But just even thinking from her standpoint, seeing that video on a loop, knowing that it's been released to the public, yes, justice there in the sense that people now believe her or may believe her. But at the same time, when we saw that video, just shocking, just astonishing. But it seems like this will be a matter that'll be taken up at another time. No ruling was made today as far as whether or not it'll be admitted into evidence in trial, but the government made it clear if they want this piece of evidence in that trial.
And it's interesting because, the defense, they can't deny what the video is, but they seem to be denying the context in the sense that this might have been a domestic spat, but it's not necessarily evidence of sex trafficking. And as I mentioned before, the prosecution would come back and counter that and say, well, where was she running away from? She was running away from a room where there might have been a sex worker in that room, and this is further allegation of an illegal sex act or freak-offs or things of that nature. Now, I want to move on to something else. The names of people in this case, another big theme that came out during the course of this hearing is regarding identities and names. And you and I both know, Elizabeth, this is something that has been litigated between the prosecution and the defense quite a lot leading up to this hearing. And there is terms about enterprise letters, about the prosecution putting in sealed letters about more specific examples of what is racketeering, what are the dates, what are the names, what are the places. The idea of names of people in this case, are they referring to witnesses? Are they referring to alleged victims? What happened today regarding the identities of people in this case and whether or not the defense will know who the prosecution plans to call?
And this was also an interesting part in the hearing, Jesse, as well, too, is that it seems like they were kind of talking, in legalese in particular, but also because a lot of that information was sealed. And the defense kind of made it clear because at one point when the government was making their stance on it, Alexandra Shapiro stepped up and said, hey, Judge, this is under seal. Obviously, she didn't say that verbatim, but she kind of made it clear to the judge that she was cautious about just kind of revealing everything about the particular enterprise letter. But one thing that the government said that stood out to me was just how fearful some of these potential witnesses are about having their names out in the public, about having their names released to the defense. And that should also kind of go to, we talk often when we're covering Diddy's stories, just about the power that he had either over the industry, over his employees, over alleged victims that he had, former girlfriends, all of that stuff. But the government did make it clear because, they couldn't get into into much details about that particular part because some aspects of it, from my understanding, were under seal. But one thing the government did make clear is that some of these witnesses don't want their names released out into the public. So they are going to kind of come up with a solution. From my understanding, it's that the government will turn over that list over to the defense, but you can imagine how fearful some of Diddy's potential, or not potential employees, but how some of the people who had worked under Diddy, whether it be for years, whether it be for a few months, could be knowing that they could potentially testify more into what was going on, as the government puts it, in the Combs enterprise.
And then the final point I want to mention and get some clarification on are timelines. I'm still shocked that this trial is going to happen by May 5th, 2025. It's only a few months away. And the idea about pretrial conference, jury questionnaire, jury selection, a motion schedule, it seemed to me that the defense got a win today in what they wanted for a schedule. Talk to us about what we can expect, some key moments coming up leading up to May 5th.
Yeah, it looks like that final pretrial conference is set for kind of late April, before the jury questionnaire is set to go out. And essentially the defense, they wanted 300 jurors a day. That's a lot of people, but it seems like they want everything to kind of move at a quick pace. But to your point, Jesse, it did seem like the defense did get a win, because one thing as well, too, is that the defense wants these jurors to be sequestered when they're doing the questionnaire. So they want to be able to speak to these jurors one-on-one. They don't want it in an open room or anything like that, and the judge approved that. So that's kind of a peek of what we'll be looking like, or what it'll be looking like come trial. So it looks like that it looks like jury selection is going to begin a little bit before May 5th. Now, we all thought May 5th was going to be the date that it started. We all thought potentially opening statements could be on May 5th, but it looks like it's being pushed back a week, just because they're anticipating so many jurors to kind of come through that courthouse, whether or not to be selected for the upcoming trial. But it just seems that the defense kind of did get a win in pushing everything back just a little bit. But again, this is a big, high-profile case. They want to make sure all their ducks are in a row. They want to make sure they're dotting their I's, crossing their T's. And so while we can expect opening statements to be pushed back just a little bit, just about a week or so, what we can expect from those jurors is for them to kind of, again, 300 people every day up until they select the men and women who are going to be a part of that jury, but again, going to be sequestered while each side kind of gets to ask them these particular questions, and they're going to be filling out that jury or juror questionnaire, something that the government didn't necessarily want, but it seems like that's going to be the idea moving forward.
I mean, that's the hope. They have an idea about how long jury selection is going to be. This is a very high-profile case. There has been so much already put out there. It's not about trying to find a jury that doesn't know Sean Combs or knows that he's been criminally indicted. It's the idea of trying to put that away and put that to the side and go in objectively. Maybe easier said than done. We shall see. Elizabeth Millner, thank you so much for coming on. Thank you for being our eyes and our ears about what we're happening in that courtroom. And thank you for going down there. Really appreciate it.
Thanks, Jesse.
All right, so here's what we're going to do. We're going to wrap up, everybody. Thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you so much for your questions. We'll continue this maybe in the next pretrial conference at the end of next month. We shall see. Always developments in the Sean Combs case. We really appreciate your support. We really appreciate you tuning in. I'm Jesse Weber. We'll catch you next time.